From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello and welcome to Firstpost America, your global pit stop for the latest news and headlines from the United States and around the world. I'm Eric Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We'll get you a roundup of all the day's top stories, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. German airline Lufthansa suspends flights to Tehran as tensions simmer in the Middle East. Austrian Airlines is now the only Western carrier offering international flights into the Iranian capital. U.S. President Joe Biden hosts the first ever trilateral summit with the leaders of Japan and the Philippines amid growing concerns of Chinese aggression in the South China Sea. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un tells his troops to be ready for war, citing unstable geopolitical situations surrounding his country. Vietnam sentences billionaire and property tycoon Chong My-lan to death in one of the biggest corruption cases in the country. The businesswoman was convicted in a $27 billion fraud case. And in West Africa, Mali's military junta bans political parties from conducting activities until further notice. The army says it is to maintain public order as calls for elections continue to grow. We begin in the Middle East, where tensions are now reaching a fevered pitch. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has promised retaliation against Israel. Addressing tens of thousands of Iranians, Khamenei threatened to punish Israel for its airstrike on the Iranian consulate in Syria's capital Damascus earlier this month.
Embassies in any country are considered part of the soil of the country that owns them. When they attack our consulate, it's as if they attacked our land. This is an international norm. The wicked regime made a mistake in this case. It must be punished, and it will be punished.
Tehran says it is committed to avenging the deaths of its generals killed in the Israeli strike. Now a U.S. intelligence report says that an Iranian attack on Israel is imminent, and that it's only a matter of when, not if. However, the intel report added that Iran would tread carefully and rely on its proxies to carry out the attack, fearing retaliation from Israel and even the United States. Meanwhile, Israel has threatened Tehran with a much superior response if an attack is launched from Iranian soil. Israel says its Air Force has been conducting drills to prepare for retaliation, including mapping out key Iranian military targets and even nuclear facilities. Now, the United States has come out in support of Israel and has threatened a powerful blow against Iran if it indeed strikes Israel. Just a day after criticizing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for his actions in Gaza, President Joe Biden promised to give Netanyahu ironclad support.
We also want to address the Iranian threat to launch they're threatening to launch a significant attack on Israel. As I told Prime Minister Netanyahu, our commitment to Israel's security against these threats from Iran and its proxies is ironclad. Let me say it again, ironclad. We're going to do all we can to protect Israel's security.
Now, Washington has even flown out some of its senior military generals to Israel in anticipation of an Iranian strike. These generals will reportedly meet Israel's defense minister and propose a joint action plan against Tehran and its proxies in the event of a strike. Now, Iran has put its military on the highest levels of readiness while Israel is bracing for a potential strike from Tehran and its proxies in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. Many are wondering, in fact hoping, cooler heads will prevail to avert what will undoubtedly be a very destructive war in the Middle East. And staying with the Middle East, 3 sons of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh have been killed in an Israeli strike in the Gaza Strip. Confirming the attack, the Israeli military described Haniyeh's sons as Hamas operatives. A drone hit the family's car in northern Gaza's Al-Shati refugee camp. Video showed the vehicle badly damaged and charred. Speaking to a media group, the Qatar-based Hamas leader said 4 of his grandchildren were also killed. On your screens right now is the video of the moment when Ismail Haniyeh received the news of the death of his sons. The video was aired by a Palestinian TV station, and as an aide received the news on his phone, Haniyeh nodded and looked down to the ground. At that time, he was visiting wounded Palestinians who were evacuated from Gaza and brought to Doha. Now, Haniyeh's aide asked if he wanted to end the hospital tour. The Hamas leader shrugged off the news, said that he will continue, and walked out of the room. Haniyeh's sons are among the highest profile figures to have been killed in the war so far. Later, speaking to a media network, Haniyeh said it won't break their determination, nor will it pressure Hamas into softening its position. President Erdogan of Turkey, a staunch supporter of the Palestinians, offered condolences to Haniyeh in a phone call. In a statement on social media, Erdogan said Israel will definitely be held accountable before the law for crimes against humanity. Now, Ismail Haniyeh has been the tough-talking face of Hamas's international diplomacy. He also insisted the death of his sons will not influence truce talks. The talks in Cairo, led by the United States, Egypt, and Qatar, continue to drag on without any sign of a breakthrough. Earlier, President Biden said Hamas needs to respond to the latest truce proposal, to which the group said it is in fact reviewing. Now, Hamas has reportedly told international mediators, including Qatar and Egypt, that it is unable to track down 40 Israeli hostages needed for the first phase of the ceasefire deal. The framework that's been laid out by negotiators says during the 6-week pause in fighting, Hamas is to release 40 of the remaining hostages. The majority of nearly 100 hostages who remain alive are believed to be male IDF soldiers or men of military reserve age. Now, Hamas is unwilling to release them at this point. Washington has also been ramping up the pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to agree to a truce, increase flow of aid into Gaza, and abandon plans to invade Rafah. And now to the war in Europe. President Volodymyr Zelensky has reportedly invited former U.S. President Donald Trump to visit Ukraine. President Zelensky reached out to Donald Trump through private channels. Now, this comes just days after the former U.S. president reportedly said that he has a peace plan for Ukraine, which includes ceding Crimea and the Donbas region to Russia. Now, the Ukrainian leader says he is open to a dialogue with Donald Trump. President Zelensky said, quote, "I need very strong arguments. I don't need a fantastic idea. I need a real idea because people's lives are at stake," end quote. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian president also called Donald Trump's proposal of ceding territory to Russia both immature and primitive. The ex-president has been a skeptic of the war in Ukraine and has criticized President Zelensky on multiple occasions. President Zelensky's invite to Trump comes as Kyiv desperately awaits aid from the United States, which has been stalled due to political deadlock in Congress. Just last week, the Ukrainian president admitted that the war in Ukraine has become a hostage of America's internal politics.
About the American aid, it's of critical importance to us. I still believe that we can get a positive vote in the United States Congress. Unfortunately, we are hostages of the situation. The issue of Ukraine, the issue of Russia's war against Ukraine, has become a question of internal politics in the United States.
Now, Donald Trump has turned down President Zelensky's invitation, and the former U.S. president says it would be inappropriate of him to visit Ukraine since he doesn't hold office. However, Trump did use the opportunity to call out his rival, President Joe Biden, for failing to stop the war in Ukraine.
Biden has no idea what the hell he's doing. He's the worst president in the history of our country. Russia would have never attacked Ukraine if I were president.
Now, as the war in Europe becomes a hot-button political issue in the upcoming presidential elections, it is clear that Donald Trump holds the key to a resolution of the war. His iron grip on the GOP is the reason House Republicans refuse to bring the aid package to the floor for a vote. Good or bad, all things politics now go through Donald Trump. And moving to East Africa, where a public hospital in Kenya has fired 100 of its doctors. This comes as thousands of doctors have been on a nationwide strike for nearly a month, demanding better pay and working conditions. However, President William Ruto says his government does not have the money to pay these striking doctors. Our next report explains the health crisis in Kenya.
Tensions between doctors and the government in Kenya have been fueling for quite some time now. Thousands of doctors have been staging a nationwide strike for almost a month. But instead of solving their problems, the Kenyan government has made them more furious. On Tuesday, a public hospital in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, fired 100 striking doctors. They were replaced with foreign medics from other East African nations. The hospital management hired 3 doctors from Ethiopia and 1 each from Tanzania and Malawi. The public hospital offers treatment to cancer patients from across the country. Due to the doctor's strike, many patients were being forced to go home without being attended. New doctors, the hospital said, would compensate for its thinning medical workforce.
We were meant to see the doctor today because she cannot swallow any food. The doctor was supposed to perform a procedure on her so that she can be able to eat. But we got sent back and asked to come tomorrow midday because there were no doctors available today. We shall try again tomorrow to see if we shall find any.
But why are so many doctors striking in Kenya? Because they are demanding better pay, improved working conditions, the hiring of medical interns, and adequate medical insurance cover.
Medical services are not free. You cannot tell us that medicine is a calling. Apart from being a calling, medicine is a career. It is a career. We are human beings. We need to be paid. We are human beings.
This isn't the first time that the doctors are up in arms against the government. In 2017, Kenya's largest medical union, which has over 7,000 members, held a nationwide strike for the same reasons. The strike went on for 100 days and forced the closure of public hospitals that led to scores of deaths. As the conditions worsened, the government signed a collective bargaining agreement with them. But the striking doctors say those demands have not been fulfilled till now.
Because government has refused to honor the collective bargaining agreement that we signed 7 years ago. The government is on strike, we have just joined them. We are telling them we won't go back to work until the doctor interns are posted, until the doctors are doing their masters, their school fees is paid and they are paid, until the medical cover for doctors is paid for, until doctors are on contracts, poorly paid contracts, are paid on full salary on PNP. We won't go off.
In March, Kenya's Employment and Labour Relations Court encouraged dialogue between the two sides. It also mandated the doctors' union to halt the strike and subsequently established a 14-day framework to resolve the deadlock.
The union, wherever they are, and all the doctors and the interns, wherever they are, is that the court stayed the strike. They are expected and they are supposed to be at work. And we are urging all of them to report to work.
Following this, the government offered salary arrears to doctors. It also promised to hire medical interns, but at lesser pay. However, the agitated doctors declined the proposal, saying they were not protesting to compromise. Last week, President William Ruto broke his silence over the strike. He said his government has no money to pay the striking doctors. The 57-year-old stressed that the country must manage within its available resources rather than resorting to borrowing wages. But the doctors believe Ruto just wants to exploit them in the name of negotiation as they continue with their protests.
And finally, our last story comes from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's dream project may have hit a roadblock. Reports say a cash crunch may have led to a rethink on the line, which is the centerpiece of Saudi Arabia's multi-billion-dollar mega future city, Neom. According to reports, the plans for the mirror-clad desert metropolis have been scaled down and the city is far from reaching its 2030 target. Is this the end of the line for the Crown Prince's dream project? Our next report provides answers.
In the year 2017, the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman announced a mega multi-billion-dollar project that would align his biggest dream to the kingdom's new future. Neom, a flagship project that aims to diversify Saudi Arabia's economy away from oil. The mega project is planned to be spread across 26,500 square kilometers on the Red Sea coast in an area larger than Kuwait or Israel. It is being touted as a glass-walled city of the future without roads and cars, powered by clean energy with no carbon emissions. Neom is expected to be split into 10 different regions, from a floating port to a ski resort, from a luxury island for tourists to a gateway for clean industry. Saudi's mega future city aims to have it all and jump right into the future. But the Saudi Crown Prince may have to wait a little longer for his dream project's fruition. The kingdom has been forced to scale back plans for the desert mirror city called The Line, which is the flagship city of the project. The line, which was visioned to stretch 170 kilometers, is expected to reach just 2.5 kilometers by 2030. The government hoped to have 1.5 million residents living in the line by 2030. But reports say the development will now house fewer than 300,000 residents by that time. As a result, at least one contractor is said to have started dismissing some workers it employs. Neom's first phase is set to cost 1.2 trillion riyals or $320 billion. Half of this has to come from the kingdom's sovereign wealth fund. However, the Sovereign Wealth Fund is yet to approve the budget for 2024. According to Bloomberg, the Sovereign Wealth Fund's cash reserves dropped to $15 billion in September last year, the lowest level since 2020. The financial realities of the massive investment have reportedly started to cause concerns at the highest levels of the Saudi government. Already, officials have said that some projects outlined in the program will be delayed past 2030. There have also been reports of Prince Mohammed bin Salman's changing vision for the project, budget overspends, and an ever-changing roster of key staff. MBS's ambitions for the line captured attention of people from across the world since the very day it was announced. He aims to build a city that is longer than the distance between New York and Philadelphia. It would contain only mirrored structures that would be taller than the Empire State Building. But none of this has been among Neom's main successes so far. What it did manage to complete is an $8 billion project of solar and wind farms that will be used to create what they call green hydrogen. Saudi Arabia hopes this would become one of the world's biggest producers of green hydrogen, reducing its reliance on oil sales. NEOM's plans also include hosting the Asian Winter Games in 2029 at a mountain resort called Trojena. A luxury tourist island in the Red Sea called Sindala is also due to open this year, but recent reports of plans being scaled down is certainly not a positive sign. For long, critics have called the project untethered from reality. So to shut down criticism and to fulfill his dream of neon, the Saudi Crown Prince may have to go full throttle.
That's all we have time for today. We certainly thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you again right back here tomorrow. Thanks again for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.